The war had been going on for 3 long years. Humanity was losing, and everyone knew it. The Velkari Empire had come from somewhere beyond the outer rim of known space, bringing with them ships that could tear through human defenses like paper. They were not just one species, but 4 different alien races working together under one banner. Their technology was better, their numbers were greater, and their determination seemed endless. Commander Jack Morrison stood in the control room of the defense station orbiting Mars. He watched the screens showing the latest reports from the front lines. Another colony had fallen yesterday. That made 12 worlds lost to the enemy. Earth itself was now in danger, and Jack knew that if Mars fell, there would be nothing left to stop the Velkari from reaching the home world. Next to him, Lieutenant Kate Rivers stared at her screen with tired eyes. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of them had. The war had taken friends, family members, and any hope they once had of winning. Kate looked up at Jack and shook her head slowly. The numbers did not lie. Humanity was running out of time. That was when the message came through. It appeared on every screen in the command center at once. The Velkari wanted to talk. They were offering a ceasefire and requesting peace negotiations. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence in the room was complete. Jack read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. The Velkari wanted to meet on neutral ground, a small moon orbiting a gas giant in the zone between human and Velkari territory. They wanted to discuss terms for ending the war. Within hours, Earth sent Ambassador Greg Palmer to lead the human delegation. Greg was an older man with gray hair and a calm way of speaking that made people trust him. He had negotiated treaties between human colonies before the war, but this would be different. This would be the most important negotiation in human history. Captain Ben Hughes commanded the destroyer Valiant, the ship chosen to carry the human delegation to the meeting. Ben was a good captain, careful and experienced. He had fought the Velkari many times and knew what they were capable of. He did not trust them, but he understood that humanity had no choice. The war had to end. With Ambassador Palmer came his assistant Lisa Chen, a young woman who was smart and quick to understand complex situations. There was also Dr. Amy Sutton, a scientist who studied alien life forms. Amy had examined Velkari bodies recovered from battle sites, trying to understand their biology. Now she would see them alive for the first time. The Valiant reached the moon 3 days later. The place was barren and gray with no atmosphere and no life. Both sides had built a temporary meeting facility there, simple metal buildings connected by enclosed walkways. It was cold and unwelcoming, which seemed appropriate for such a serious meeting. The Velkari delegation was already waiting. Their leader was High Arbiter Kethzal, a tall creature covered in scales like a reptile. He stood nearly 8 feet tall with eyes that seemed to look right through a person. Behind him were 3 other aliens, each from a different species within the Velkari Empire. One looked like an insect, one appeared to be made of some kind of gas held in a containment suit, and one was covered in dark fur with claws on its hands. The first day of negotiations was difficult. The Velkari wanted humanity to give up 15 star systems, hand over advanced technology, and pay tribute every year. Ambassador Palmer refused. He offered instead to share some territories and work together on mutual defense. Neither side would back down. Days passed slowly. Both delegations were tired from the war, but neither wanted to look weak. They argued over star maps, trade routes, and prisoner exchanges. Progress was slow and painful. On the 5th day, High Arbiter Kethzal made an unexpected proposal. He explained that in Velkari culture, the most important agreements were not sealed with signatures on paper. They were sealed with blood. Each side would give a blood sample, and these samples would be mixed together in a special ceremony. The mixed blood would be kept as proof of the agreement. To break such a treaty would bring shame and dishonor that no Velkari could accept. The humans looked at each other uncertainly. Dr. Amy Sutton quietly warned about possible diseases or biological incompatibility. But Ambassador Palmer saw an opportunity. If this blood ritual was so important to the Velkari, it might be the key to getting a peace treaty that would actually last. Palmer sent a message back to Earth, explaining the situation. After several hours, Earth gave permission to proceed. Over the next week, both sides worked out the final terms. Humanity would withdraw from 5 contested systems but keep the others. Trade routes would be opened. Prisoners of war would be exchanged. Both sides would agree not to attack each other, and the treaty would be sealed in blood. The ceremony was set for the following morning. As the human delegation prepared for it, they talked quietly among themselves. None of them had ever heard of such a ritual before. It seemed strange, even primitive, but if it meant peace, they would do it. Dr. Sutton prepared medical equipment just in case something went wrong. Captain Hughes made sure security teams were ready, though he hoped they would not be needed. Lisa Chen reviewed the treaty terms one more time, making sure every detail was correct. Ambassador Palmer stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars through a small window. He thought about all the people who had died in this war. He thought about the colonies that had been destroyed. He thought about Earth, still vulnerable and afraid. Tomorrow he would cut his own hand and let his blood mix with alien blood. It was a strange way to make peace, but these were strange times. As he prepared for sleep, Palmer hoped that this blood ritual would mean something. He hoped it would create a bond strong enough to end the killing. He had no way of knowing that the ceremony would reveal something about humanity that would change everything. The ceremony room looked different from the day before. The Velkari had hung their banners on the walls, showing symbols and colors that meant things the humans did not understand. The humans had brought flags from Earth, hastily printed and hung beside the alien decorations. In the center of the room stood a pedestal holding the treaty document, written in both English and the Velkari primary language. Ambassador Greg Palmer entered the room wearing his best formal clothes. Beside him walked Captain Ben Hughes and Dr. Amy Sutton. They had all agreed on what to do, but Palmer could feel his heart beating faster than normal. This was unlike any diplomatic ceremony he had ever attended. High Arbiter Kethzal stood across from them, wearing armor decorated with strange symbols. The armor looked ancient and ceremonial rather than practical. The other Velkari delegates stood in a line behind him, each dressed in their own formal attire. Observers from both sides filled the gallery around the room, watching in complete silence. An old Velkari female entered carrying a vessel made of some dark metal. Her scales were faded with age, and her body bore many scars that looked deliberately made, like ritual markings. She began to chant in a language that even the translation devices could not understand. The words were old, perhaps older than the Velkari Empire itself. Her voice echoed through the chamber, making the moment feel heavy with importance. The priestess held up a blade for everyone to see. It was ceremonial but sharp, its edge catching the light. She approached High Arbiter Kethzal first, speaking words in that ancient tongue. Kethzal extended his arm without hesitation, his scaled skin exposed. The blade cut quickly and precisely. Dark purple blood flowed from the wound into the vessel. Kethzal did not flinch or show any sign of pain. The priestess moved to the next Velkari delegate, the one who looked like an insect. The creature's greenish blood dripped into the vessel, mixing with Kethzal's purple. Then came the gaseous being, who released some kind of crystalline substance that served as their version of blood. Finally, the furred warrior contributed deep red blood that was almost the same color as human blood, but not quite. The priestess stirred the mixture with a special rod, chanting continuously. Then she turned toward the humans. Ambassador Palmer took a deep breath and stepped forward. He rolled up his sleeve, exposing his arm. Dr. Sutton had briefed him on what to expect, but that did not make it easier. His mouth felt dry. The blade touched his skin and cut. Palmer felt the sharp pain but kept his face calm. His blood, bright red and rich with oxygen, began to drip into the vessel. It fell into the mixture of alien blood already there. Then something unexpected happened. The priestess stopped chanting. She stared into the vessel, her eyes growing wide. The other Velkari delegates leaned forward to see, and gasps came from their side of the room. Something was wrong, or at least different from what they expected. The mixture in the vessel began to glow. It was faint at first, just a slight luminescence, but it grew stronger. The priestess took a step backward, clearly surprised. High Arbiter Kethzal moved closer to the vessel, his usually calm face showing alarm. In all his years, in all the blood treaties the Velkari had performed, nothing like this had ever happened. Ambassador Palmer looked at Dr. Sutton with concern. She looked just as confused as he felt. Captain Hughes's hand moved toward his weapon, though he knew that starting a fight now would mean disaster for everyone. The glow grew brighter for a moment, then began to fade. The mixture settled down, but its color had changed. Instead of being a mix of all the different blood types, it had turned a deep red color. The human blood seemed to have dominated the mixture, changing everything else to match it. The priestess spoke rapidly to Kethzal in their language. The words came too fast for the translation devices to keep up. Other Velkhari delegates joined the conversation, their voices urgent and confused. The humans stood waiting, not knowing what was happening but understanding that something significant had occurred. Finally, High Arbiter Kethzal turned to face Ambassador Palmer. When he spoke, the translation came through clearly but slowly, as if he was choosing each word carefully. He said that the blood does not lie. The ritual reveals truth. The human species carried something in their biology that the Velkhari had never encountered before in 10,000 years of making blood treaties. Palmer kept his voice steady despite his confusion. He asked what this meant for the treaty they had worked so hard to create. Kethzal was silent for a long time. He spoke with his fellow delegates in low voices, conferring about what had happened. The humans could only stand and wait, knowing that their fate and the fate of the peace treaty hung in the balance of this strange moment. At last, Kethzal straightened and made his decision. He announced that the treaty would stand. A blood oath could not be broken, and the ritual was complete even if it had produced unexpected results. But he also said that they needed to understand what humans truly were. The ritual had raised questions that demanded answers. The formal signing of the treaty proceeded after that. Both sides marked the documents, made their official statements, and performed the remaining ceremonies. But the atmosphere in the room had changed completely. The Velkhari delegates watched the humans with new eyes. There was curiosity there, but also something that looked like concern or even fear. When the ceremony finally ended, both delegations returned to their ships. Dr. Sutton quietly asked one of the Velkhari assistants for a small sample of the mixed blood. The alien hesitated but then agreed. Amy carefully stored the sample in a sealed container, planning to study it as soon as possible. On the journey back to the Valiant, nobody spoke much. They had achieved peace, which was what they came for. The war would end. Lives would be saved. But they had also revealed something about humanity that even they did not understand. Something in human blood had dominated the mixture, had changed it, had made the ancient Velkhari ritual produce results that had never been seen before. Captain Hughes broke the silence as they entered the ship. He said that at least the treaty was signed and the war was over. Ambassador Palmer nodded but looked troubled. Dr. Sutton said nothing, her mind already working on how to analyze the blood sample and figure out what had happened. As the Valiant prepared to depart the neutral moon, Palmer looked back at the meeting facility through a viewport. Somewhere in that building, the vessel with the mixed blood would be preserved as a symbol of the treaty, but now it was also evidence of something else, something about humanity that might change how they were seen by every species in the galaxy. Dr. Amy Sutton did not sleep that night. She worked in the medical laboratory aboard the Valiant, running test after test on the blood sample she had obtained from the ceremony. Captain Ben Hughes had given her complete access to the ship's research equipment, and Ambassador Greg Palmer had authorized her to investigate the mystery with full priority. The treaty was signed and peace was coming, but everyone understood that what happened in that vessel could mean something important for humanity's future. The first tests showed nothing unusual. Amy examined the human blood sample on its own, looking at every detail she could measure. The composition was normal. The cells looked exactly as they should. The oxygen-carrying capacity was standard for human blood. There was nothing special or strange about it when tested alone. But when she mixed it again with samples of the alien blood, the same reaction occurred. Something extraordinary happened at the molecular level. The human blood changed the alien blood, transformed it, dominated it. Amy had never seen anything like it in all her years of studying biology. Lieutenant Kyle Barnes, the ship's medical officer, came to help her with the analysis. He was young but skilled, and he brought fresh eyes to the problem. Together they discovered that human hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in blood, was interacting with compounds in the alien blood in impossible ways. The iron in human blood was causing chemical reactions that broke down complex alien proteins. It was almost like an immune response, but far more aggressive and sophisticated. Amy contacted her colleague back on Earth, Dr. Carl Weber, who worked at the main research facility in Geneva. Because of the distance, there was a delay in their communications, but they began working together across space to understand what was happening. Carl ran parallel tests on Earth while Amy worked on the ship. They compared results and built theories together. The breakthrough came when they examined the blood mixture under a quantum microscope, a device that could see individual molecules and how they interacted. What they found was shocking. The human red blood cells were essentially attacking the alien blood cells, but not to destroy them. Instead, they were restructuring them, changing them, converting them into something compatible with human biochemistry. Amy sat back in her chair and stared at the results. She had to read them several times to believe what she was seeing. Human blood was not just different from alien blood. It was dominant. It treated other species' blood as something to be conquered and transformed. Meanwhile, aboard the main Velkari flagship, their own scientists were conducting their own investigation. The Velkari Empire had been built on three foundations. First was their superior technology. Second was their military strength. Third was the sacred blood treaties that bound their coalition of 4 species together. The idea that a species could produce such a reaction in the blood ritual was completely unprecedented in their long history. High Arbiter Kethzal had summoned his chief scientist, a Scarth named Vexnar, to explain what had happened. Vexnar was old and experienced, having served the Empire for most of his long life. His report to Kethzal was disturbing in ways the High Arbiter had not expected. Vexnar explained that in the 10,000 years of Velkari history, they had incorporated dozens of different species into their empire through blood treaties. Every single time the blood mixture had been harmonious. Different species' blood would coexist in the vessel, maintaining their separate properties while mingling together. This was seen as a symbol of unity and diversity, of different peoples coming together while keeping their individual identities. Human blood had done the exact opposite. It had dominated the mixture. It had transformed the other blood types at a cellular level. It had conquered rather than coexisted. The symbolism was impossible to ignore, and it worried Kethzal deeply. But Vexnar had more to report, and this information made Kethzal's blood run cold. The Velkari had gone back and analyzed battle sites from the war, places where human and Velkari forces had fought and bled. They examined the soil, the water, anywhere that human blood had mixed with alien biology. The same pattern appeared everywhere. The human component proved overwhelmingly dominant. This explained something the Velkari had noticed during the war, but had not understood at the time. Human soldiers who were wounded, even when exposed to alien diseases or toxins, showed remarkable recovery rates. The Velkari had thought this was because humans had good medical care. Now a darker truth emerged. Human biology was aggressively resilient. It did not just defend against foreign substances, it conquered them. Back on the Valiant, Ambassador Palmer called an emergency meeting of the senior staff. Dr. Sutton presented her findings, displaying data on screens in the conference room. The implications of what she had discovered hung heavy in the air. Amy explained it in simple terms. Human blood treated alien biology as something to be conquered and converted, not destroyed but transformed, made compatible by force. The iron in human blood, the structure of human cells, the proteins humans carried, all of it worked together to dominate other biological systems. Captain Hughes leaned back in his chair and asked the obvious question. Did the Velkari know about this? Were their scientists learning the same things right now? Palmer answered that if the Velkari scientists were competent, they were discovering the same facts. The real question was what they would do with that knowledge. Would they see it as a threat? Would they reconsider the peace treaty? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A message arrived from High Arbiter Kethzal, marked as urgent priority. He requested another meeting, just the core delegates from both sides with no observers or witnesses. The tone of the message was serious but not hostile. Ambassador Palmer agreed immediately. Within hours, both delegations were back in the meeting facility on the neutral moon, but this time the atmosphere was different. The ceremonial aspects were gone. This was a meeting between two sides who had just learned something that changed everything. Palmer brought Dr. Sutton, Captain Hughes, and Lieutenant Dan Ross, an intelligence officer, who had been briefed on the situation. They entered the meeting room not knowing what to expect. Would the Velkari demand changes to the treaty? Would they accuse humanity of hiding the truth about their biology? Would they see humans as a threat to be contained? Kethazal was already there with Vexnar and two other advisors. The High Arbiter's demeanor had changed from the formal rigidity of the ceremony to something more guarded and calculating. He looked at the humans with new eyes, seeing them not as defeated enemies or new allies but as something else entirely. Something that needed to be understood before it could be trusted. The meeting was about to begin, and both sides knew that what was said in the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the peace treaty, but humanity's place in the galaxy. The blood ritual had revealed a truth that neither side had expected. Now they had to decide what to do about it. The meeting room felt smaller this time, more confined. Only the essential people were present. High Arbiter Kethazal sat across from Ambassador Greg Palmer, with their respective teams flanking them. The Velkari scientist Vexnar held data tablets in his clawed hands, his expression unreadable. On the human side, Dr. Amy Sutton had her own research ready to share if needed. Kethazal spoke first, his translated words coming through clear and direct. He said that his scientists had analyzed what occurred during the blood ritual. He assumed the human scientists had done the same. There was no accusation in his voice, just a statement of fact. Palmer nodded and confirmed that they had conducted their own analysis. He offered to have Dr. Sutton share their findings if the Velkari wished to compare results. Kethazal raised a scaled hand to stop him. He said it would not be necessary. Their conclusions almost certainly aligned. He had not asked for this meeting to compare data. He had asked for it to discuss what that data meant. The High Arbiter continued, explaining that in 10,000 years of incorporating species into the Velkari Empire through blood treaties, they had never encountered anything like human physiology. Human biology was not just unusual, it was unprecedented. Vexnar stepped forward and activated a holographic display that showed the blood mixture from the ceremony. The recording played in slow motion, showing the molecular level interactions. The human cells moved through the alien blood like predators stalking prey. They did not destroy the alien cells. Instead, they consumed them, converted them, transformed them into something new. The Velkari scientist spoke with a mixture of academic fascination and genuine concern. He said this was not merely unusual biology. It was aggressive biology. Human blood did not seek harmony with other species. It sought dominance over them. Dr. Sutton felt defensive at hearing her species described this way. She responded that dominance was one interpretation. Another interpretation was that human biology was simply more adaptable, more resilient. Humans had evolved on a harsh world with extreme environmental pressures. Their blood reflected that evolutionary history. Kethazal acknowledged this point. He said that Earth was designated as a Class 7 death world in Velkari charts. They were well aware of the planet's dangerous conditions. What puzzled them was why a species from such a world would evolve biology that was not merely defensive, but aggressively adaptive. Captain Ben Hughes spoke up, his voice carrying an edge. He asked if this meeting was to inform them that the Velkari were reconsidering the treaty. He pointed out that the blood ritual had been the Velkari's idea, not humanity's. Kethazal's expression was difficult to read, but his posture suggested a mixture of respect and wariness. He stated clearly that the treaty would stand. A blood oath could not be broken under any circumstances, but he would be a fool to ignore what the ritual had revealed. The human species was more dangerous than the Velkari had understood when they started the war. Ambassador Palmer chose his next words very carefully. He pointed out that humans had not started the conflict. The Velkari had invaded human colonies. Humans had simply defended themselves. If human biology made them resilient, that was evolution's gift, not a weapon they had chosen to wield. Kethazal agreed that this was true, but he said it did not change the fundamental reality. Whether intentional or not, human biology was a weapon, a very effective one. Vexnar brought up new data on the holographic display. He showed analysis from battle sites where human and Velkari forces had fought during the war. Wherever human soldiers had bled, the local ecosystem showed changes. The changes were subtle but measurable. Alien plant life became more compatible with human biology over time. Local microorganisms adapted to process human blood chemistry. The soil itself showed altered mineral composition. Dr. Sutton examined the data with growing unease. She had not had access to battlefield samples, but the Velkari data was thorough and well documented. From a scientific standpoint, she had to admit it was fascinating. It suggested that human blood contained markers or proteins that could template biological systems, restructuring them to be more compatible with human life. Vexnar said what everyone was thinking. The templating was making alien environments more suitable for human habitation. Whether humans intended it or not, they were changing worlds just by being present on them. On a long enough timeline, any world touched by humanity would become more Earth-like in its basic biology. The room fell silent as the full implications became clear. Lieutenant Dan Ross, the intelligence officer, was the one who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. He said the Velkari were suggesting that humans were a terraforming species, that they changed worlds simply by existing on them. Kethzal corrected him. They were not suggesting it. They were observing it. The data was clear and undeniable. This raised a question that would echo through the Velkari Empire and beyond its borders. The Velkari had made peace with humanity because continuing the war would have cost too much in lives and resources. But what had they truly made peace with? A species that, by its very nature, transformed everything it touched? Palmer felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was more than diplomacy. This was more than politics. This was a fundamental reassessment of humanity's place in the galaxy and what it meant to be human. He asked Kethzal directly what the Velkari wanted from humanity. The High Arbiter was quiet for a long time before answering. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone Palmer had not heard from him before. It sounded almost like respect mixed with caution. Kethzal said he wanted understanding. The blood treaty bound humans and Velkari together now. Their blood was literally mixed in the sacred vessel. By the most ancient laws of the Velkari, they were now bound to protect each other's interests. But Kethzal needed to know if humans understood what they were. Did they know why their biology was so aggressive? Palmer looked to Dr. Sutton, who slowly shook her head. She explained that humans had never had reason to study this aspect of their biology before. Humans were the only intelligent species on Earth. They had no comparison point, no other species to measure themselves against, until they met the Velkari and other aliens. Kethzal seemed to accept this answer. He said that perhaps this was where they needed to begin. Not as enemies, not even as uneasy allies, but as partners in discovery. Humans had shared their blood with the Velkari, both literally in the ritual and symbolically in the treaty. Now they should work together to understand what that meant. The proposal was unprecedented. Joint research teams combining human and Velkari scientific expertise would study human biology in the context of the broader galactic community. They would investigate why humans were the way they were, what implications it had for the future, and how both species could coexist knowing this truth. Palmer agreed immediately. It was the right thing to do, and it would help solidify the peace between their peoples. Both sides spent the next few hours working out the details. Research stations would be established. Scientists would be exchanged. Data would be shared openly. As the meeting concluded and both delegations prepared to depart, Palmer could not help but wonder if they had just won something or lost something. They had signed a peace treaty to end a war, but in doing so, they had discovered that humanity was something more, and perhaps something more dangerous than anyone had realized. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to make peace with Earth's children. 6 months had passed since the blood treaty was signed. A joint research station now orbited Earth, something that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. The station was a symbol of cooperation between humans and the Velkari Empire, a place where scientists from both civilizations worked side by side to unlock the mysteries of human biology. Dr. Amy Sutton led the human research team. Working alongside her was Vexnar, the Velkari chief scientist and specialist from all 4 species that made up the Velkari Empire. What they discovered in those months was both illuminating and troubling. The truth about humanity was more complex than anyone had guessed. The research confirmed what the initial tests had suggested. Humans were the product of an evolutionary process unlike anything else in the known galaxy. Earth's harsh conditions, its cycles of mass extinctions and environmental catastrophes, had forged a species with biological resilience that seemed almost supernatural. Every system in the human body was designed not just to survive, but to overcome. Lieutenant Helen Price, a biochemist who had joined the research team, prepared a presentation for both human and Velkari leadership. The presentation would be broadcast via quantum link to audiences on Earth and across the Velkhari Empire. Helen was nervous but determined to explain their findings in terms everyone could understand. She stood before the cameras and began. Human blood was exceptionally rich in iron, far more than most species in the galaxy. That iron made human blood aggressive at a molecular level, but there was more to it than just chemistry. The human immune system was exceptionally adaptive. Humans constantly produced antibodies and enzymes that could break down foreign proteins. In a very real sense, every human was a walking biological warfare laboratory, constantly ready to fight off anything foreign to their system. Vexnar added his perspective from the Velkhari point of view. Most species in the galaxy evolved in stable environments. Their worlds had consistent climates, few major disasters, and relatively gentle evolutionary pressures. Humans were different. They evolved in chaos. Earth had been hit by asteroids covered in ice, scorched by volcanic eruptions, and subjected to dramatic climate swings. Every system in the human body was designed to handle extremes and overcome obstacles. It was not malicious. It was simply how they were made. The presentation caused reactions across both civilizations. On Earth, people struggled to understand what it meant. Were they dangerous? Were they monsters? Many humans felt defensive, arguing that they had never asked to be this way. Others felt proud, seeing it as proof of human strength and resilience. In the Velkhari Empire, the reactions were more varied. Some species saw opportunity in aligning with such a resilient partner. Others saw threat and began to prepare defenses, not against human weapons but against human biology itself. Fear spread through some corners of the Empire, fear of what humans might become if they spread across the galaxy. High Arbiter Keth Zal addressed a joint session of the Velkhari Council and Earth's united government. His words were broadcast across both civilizations. He spoke with the authority of someone who had fought humans in war, and then made peace with them. He said the Velkhari had gone to war with humanity, believing them to be primitive beings occupying valuable territory. They had made peace, believing they had fought the humans to a stalemate. But the truth was more humbling. They had made peace with a species that might be the most biologically dominant force in the galaxy. The blood ritual had shown them what they were too proud to see during the war. Ambassador Greg Palmer, who had been promoted to Secretary of Interstellar Relations, responded with measured words. He acknowledged that humanity had unique biological traits, but he emphasized that humans had never sought dominance over others. Humans wanted to survive, to explore, to find their place among the stars. If their biology was exceptional, they had not known it until the Velkhari showed them. But as news of humanity's unique nature spread beyond the Velkhari Empire to other civilizations in the galaxy, reactions varied wildly. Some species reached out seeking alliances and trade agreements with these resilient newcomers. They saw humans as potential partners who could help them solve problems or defend against threats. Other species saw only danger. They began to arm themselves, not preparing for war necessarily, but preparing to contain humanity if needed. Some proposed quarantine protocols that would limit where humans could travel. Others suggested monitoring systems to track human biological impact on worlds they visited. On the research station, Dr. Sutton and Vexnar made another discovery that put everything in a new and startling perspective. They found evidence in Earth's geological record of previous alien civilizations. Millions of years ago, other species had landed on Earth attempting to establish colonies. All had failed. All had been consumed by Earth's aggressive biosphere. Amy presented this finding to the research team with a sense of awe. Earth was not just a death world. It was a crucible, a forge that tested any species that tried to settle there. Species that landed on Earth either adapted to its harsh conditions or died. And in adapting to Earth, they became something else, something more aggressive, more resilient, more like Earth itself. Captain Pete Warren, who now commanded the Joint Defense Fleet protecting the research station, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Were humans the first intelligent species to evolve on Earth, or just the first to survive long enough to leave the planet and reach the stars? The question had no clear answer, but it pointed to a larger truth. Humanity had not chosen to be what they were. They were shaped by their world, molded by billions of years of evolutionary pressure that would have destroyed weaker species. Earth had made them strong, but that strength came with responsibilities and consequences. As months turned to years, human expansion into the galaxy proceeded with new awareness and new caution. Every colony was established with biological monitoring systems. Scientists tracked how human presence affected local ecosystems. Every interaction with alien species was studied for its long-term biological effects. Humanity learned to be careful with the gift and curse that evolution had given them. The blood treaty vessel, that mixture of human and Velkari blood, was preserved in a shrine on the neutral moon where peace had been signed. It had become more than a symbol of the treaty. It represented a larger truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. The vessel was visited by people from many species, all coming to see the physical evidence of what humans were. High Arbiter Keth Zal, in his final years of service before retirement, often visited the shrine. He had become friends with Ambassador Palmer over the years, and they sometimes met there to talk about the past and the future. During one such visit, Keth Zal told Palmer that they thought they were signing a simple peace treaty. They did not know they were creating a biological alliance that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Palmer smiled at the comment. He said they had signed the treaty in blood, and perhaps everyone should have paid more attention to whose blood it was. The ritual had been meant to bind them together, and it had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. But it had also revealed truths that changed everything. As humanity took its place among the stars, other species watched with a mixture of hope and caution. The species that had survived Earth's crucible was now among them, carrying in every cell the legacy of the harshest world in the known galaxy. Some feared what humans might become. Others hoped humans would use their resilience to help solve the galaxy's problems. The peace treaty had been signed in blood. The aliens had not anticipated what human blood could do, and in the end, that made all the difference. Humanity was no longer just another species trying to survive in the galaxy. They were something unique, something powerful, something that would change the future of every civilization they encountered. The war had ended, but a new chapter in galactic history had just begun.